it's the hardest thing that I want to keep doing.
Right. Okay, here we go. Welcome to the Writer's Bar. I'm your host, Baron R. Bircher. I am the LA Times bestselling author of Rain Dogs and the award-winning Ty Dawson series. I have the privilege tonight of having a guest that is not only a friend, but he's the Anthony Award-winning author of the best-selling Blacktop Wasteland, Sean A. COSBY. Sean, welcome to the Writer's Bar, man. Thank you for being here. Cheers.
Cheers to you. Thank you for having me. I'm having myself a little Jameson and Coke on ice. That's good. Good stuff. So happy to be with you, man. So happy to talk with you. We got to meet in person for the first time last year at BoucherCon, which was just fantastic. Was one of my favorite events last year. Of course, before all the craziness with the pandemic started, but it's one of my favorite memories of sitting around the bar with guys like you and Alex Segura and just a bunch of other writers just kind of shooting the breeze, man. It's like nobody understands what it's like except other writers, I think, in my opinion. So it's good to opportunity to talk and kind of go over the work and the craft and what it means to put your butt in the seat and try to make something happen.
Man, well, we had a blast. That was a very memorable time, that's for sure. But not only was that pre-COVID craziness, it was also holy crap, your life went into overdrive. And just allow me to put my glasses on for a second, because I want people to really understand what's been going on with you. Not only is it a best-selling book, Blacktop Wasteland again. Do you have a copy? Do you have a cover that you can show? Because I read mine on Kindle and I don't have any cover art.
I don't have it. Wait a minute. Aha! I do.
There we go. That's the one. Blacktop Wasteland. Here's what's been going on for Sean and this fabulous book. Amazon's #1 mystery thriller of the year. #3 book overall. I mean, seriously. New York Times notable book of the year. New York Times editor's choice. He's had shout outs from Stephen King, Lee Child, Craig Johnson, I don't know, and everybody else you can think of. And I think he's been nominated for everything you can be nominated for, except maybe the Nobel Prize, but maybe that's it.
Yeah, we're waiting on the report from them. No, it's been an incredible journey, man. It's been crazy. It's one of those things where when you write a book, you hope for the best and you prepare for maybe not the worst, but you temper your expectations. And I've always tempered my expectations. I don't think that I'm really anything special. I just like to write and I like to tell stories. And so when I got an inkling that things were starting to pick up steam when I got a bunch of really cool blurbs, and from two people that really, really are idols of mine. I got a blurb from Walter Mosley and I got a blurb from Dennis Lehane. And I was like, wow, man, it's getting real now. And then, as you mentioned, Craig Johnson, who's been so nice. He was a big fan and supporter of my first mystery novel, My Darkest Prayer. And he reached out and asked me, could he do a blurb? And that was really, I love the Longmire series. It's one of my favorite books to read. And so things started rolling. I'm like, okay, all right. But I think when you talked about Stephen King was doing one of these Zoom things, one of these podcasts with Murder by the Book bookstore. And he mentioned my book, and I wasn't watching the podcast. I was writing, and my phone started vibrating on my desk, just jumping off the desk. I'm like, what is going on? And so I looked at it, and it was like people texting me, you got to go on Twitter. You got to go on Facebook Live. Stephen King is talking about your book. So I hurried up and got on there, and he said a very complimentary thing about it. And that was the moment, I think, where I realized, okay, things are different now. Things are really different now. This is not just me, farting around, on my lunch break, this is something else. This is a different type of situation. And I mean, I'm so blessed and so grateful that a lot of people seem to have connected with the book.
Yeah, well, I have to say, there's nobody that I know that is better equipped at being a gentleman and a humble dude to be able to handle this without kind of getting nutty. So I don't expect you to say anything to that, but it's true. Would you? So tell me, what led you to wanting to be a writer? You obviously you didn't come out of the womb writing books. So where have you been, and how did you get here?
Well, if my mama was on screen right now, she would tell you that I came out, I started talking at 2 and I haven't shut up since. And but I don't know. I guess I always was fascinated with storytelling. I grew up in a family of really great orators, of really great I like to call them backyard philosophers and barbecue storytellers. And I grew up in a family that you had to be very quick with your wit, because we always cut each other. We always roasted each other. And my uncles were very funny, very comical guys. My cousins, growing up in a big family, my dad has 11 brothers and sisters. My mom has 4. I have a lot of cousins, a lot of relatives. And so that kind of oral tradition was always fascinating to me. I didn't really start thinking about being a writer, though, until probably like the 9th or 10th grade. I got assigned, and I had an assignment in English class to rewrite the ending of a classic of like, I ended up getting Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and I rewrote the ending, and I made it this really over the top, knockdown, drag out fight. And anyway, my English teacher was a guy named Jeff Bone. He gave me a C on the project. He said it was too much gratuitous violence. He pulled me aside after class and he said, you have a really strong voice. I didn't know what he meant. I think he's talking about my physical voice. And he's like, and I was like, I said, well, my voice has been changing. He's like, no, you're writing, your writing voice. He said, you make really unique choices. And I think you have a talent for this. And I said, I like reading a lot. I never really tried writing. So he gave me some books about writing. He gave me The Elements of Style by Strunk and White. He gave me a biography of Samuel Beckett, and he gave me the collected works of Chekhov. And I started reading those, and they were a little above my pay grade at the time, but I kind of understood what he was trying to do. He was trying to open my mind up to a wider world about writing. And then life happened for the next 15 years. I did a lot of different things. I went to college. I dropped out of college to help my mom with some things. I traveled around for a while. I did a whole 18-month Jack Kerouac thing where I went to New Mexico. I lived in Albuquerque for a while. I hitchhiked from Virginia to Albuquerque, and I got there and lived with some friends of mine who were on a.
We got to make a side deal. You have to come back and we'll just talk about that. Sorry to interrupt you.
That's a whole.
I want to hear that story.
Whole story.
Please go ahead.
That's a whole story within itself. Anyway, I did that for a while. I came back to Virginia and got a job working. I got several jobs. I was a bouncer for a while. I worked on a farm. I ended up doing some retail work for a long time. And I always kept writing, just always writing. I never finished a book during that time, but I wrote a lot of short stories. And, just nothing really was hitting. I was writing a lot more like speculative fiction back then, some more horror stuff, and nothing was clicking with people. And anyway, what happened was about almost 10 years ago now, a friend of mine who is a belly dancer went to New York City to do a show. And after the show, she went to this bar in the East Village where a guy named Todd Robinson was bartending, and he managed this bar called Shade. And Todd published a magazine called Thug Lit. Now, when she came back home, we got together for some drinks, and she's like, "Hey, I talked to this guy, and he published this magazine, and he's looking for writers. You used to send him a story." At the time, I wasn't really writing crime fiction. I was still kind of doing horror and sci-fi and fantasy and stuff. And I said, "Well, I mean, I love crime fiction. I love all crime fiction. I love hard-boiled noir stuff. I love English drawing room mystery stuff. I love the early 20th century East Coast dandy Ellery Queen stuff. I love all crime fiction. You know, everything from Philip Marlowe to Chester Himes to Martin Cruz Smith, C.J. Box, everything. So all right, I'll write a story. I wrote a story. I sent it in, and it got published. It was really the first piece of my writing that got published for money. Like, I actually got paid for that story. And it was funny because it just felt, when you just feel like something just clicks. Like you find your place, And for me, that was crime fiction. And I didn't know it. And I love crime. Like I said, I grew up loving the genre. I just didn't know if I had it in me to write it. And started out with Thug Lit, got published in like a bunch of other magazines. It eventually wrote a book called My Darkest Prayer that was published by an independent publisher. And so in the course of publishing My Darkest Prayer, I saved my money and I went to VoucherCon 2018, which was in St. Petersburg, Florida. And this is a funny story. I've told this story before, but so I go to VoucherCon, and a friend of mine named Eric Pruitt was putting together a panel of Southern crime fiction. And he said, "Hey, man, you want to be on this panel?" And I was like, "Bruh, I don't even have a book out till like next year. My book wasn't coming out for like 6 months." I said, "I'm really here as a fan and trying to drum up support for the book." And Eric is a hoot. Eric, "Man, I don't care about that. You sit on this panel." So it's me, and it's Ace Atkins, who's an incredible writer, Alex Segura, the magnificent writer, Steph Post, who's just a beautiful lyrical writer, and me. And we had a great time. It's one of the best panels I've ever been on. It was my first panel at a crime convention. And after the initial panel was over, we had a lady ask this question. We got people to get up and ask questions. And this lady got up, and we had been talking about the South. We've been talking about everything, about race and class and everything. And she made this comment. I'll paraphrase it. It's been a few years now. But she was like, I kind of wish that we could go back to the antebellum times, because I know it was rough for some people, but I miss the manners and stuff. And nobody said a word. You can hear a pin drop.
Yeah,
and Eric says, "Hey, Sean, you want to take that?" Love to take that question. So I kind of made fun of her. I said, "Look, I know it's hard for you." I said, my folks have been minorities for a long time. So I said, "Me and you, we're going to work through this together. I'm going to show you how to deal with this." And everybody laughed. And after that, I was running to the lobby because there was a guy named Jordan Harper who was signing books, and I really wanted to get him to sign my copy of She Rides Shotgun. Anybody hasn't read it? That's a magnificent novel. She Rides Shotgun is incredible. And a guy tapped me on my shoulder, and he said, "Hey, my name's Josh Gessler. I'm an agent." He said, "I really liked what you were saying on the panel, and I liked how you handled yourself in there." He said, "You got anything you're working on?" And what I was working on was Blacktop Wasteland. So I just finished this Southern heist novel. He said, "Well, when you get back home, send it to me and we'll see what happens." So that was in November of 2018. He sold it to Flatiron Books in February of 2019, and it came out in July of 2020. And it changed my life. It definitely changed my life.
Well,
I'm long-winded.
But I mean, I have to say, you just characterized it as a heist novel, and I would say that as I was reading it, I'm trying to think, how would I boil this down? And it is so many things. At its heart, it's kind of a caper novel. It's a heist novel, but there is some very deep character stuff. There's some you have a gift for dialogue and character revelation and development that I haven't seen in quite some time. But when you mentioned the size of your family and having to like protect yourself, now I get it. You developed it here. I bet you developed it young, right?
Oh yeah, you have to, because you gotta, I had everybody from my grandmother down, like my grandmother would crack on you, and my little cousin would crack on you at family gatherings. So you had to be sharp. You had to be on your feet, man. My grandfather was a great wit, man. Oh my God, my grandfather was a great wit. I remember one time we were at a cookout, and somebody asked him. He said, how's your sister-in-law doing? And he said, she's still ugly. And they was like, oh, don't say that. And he said, she walked by my she walked by my refrigerator, my milk got sour. And I'm like, and so he was just a great wit, man. And so I did when I started writing seriously, I love the rhythm of language. I love the way people really talk. I miss not just the whiskey, but I miss being in bars, because I used to listen to people talk, not
Yeah.
eavesdrop. I didn't really care what they were talking, but I wanted to listen how they talk, how people cut each other off in a conversation, and how the rhythm goes up and down depending on how the person feels. And so I try to replicate that in my dialogue, in my books, and I try to make it really as natural as possible. But thank you for saying that about the book. I really appreciate it. I'm a big admirer of yours and your writing style, and I tend to think of myself as a more naturalistic writer. I'm writing about people that are on the margins, and I'll probably always will. That fascinates me, not just because I grew up in that type of circumstance, but I think it says a lot. You can judge a society by how well their least powerful members are doing. And so I like to look at people that are in desperate situations and talk about that in my writing. And it is about the heist, and it is about revenge, or it is about crime and whatnot, but it's also about people and how people deal with untenable situations. And so
Oh,
I like to say
it's
that,
about.
Black Wasteland. Oh,
I'm
go
so
ahead. Go
sorry.
ahead.
It's about family. It's about loss. It's about growth. There's a scene in there I wanted to share with you. It almost brought me to tears. It was so subtle and so beautiful. Uh, there's a scene where Bug and his dad go to the Tasty Freeze, and his dad
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
wants to order him his favorite, a strawberry shake, and he doesn't correct his dad
Mm-hmm.
because that's not his favorite, and he adores his dad, so he doesn't
Right.
correct him out loud, but under his breath he said chocolate. And I thought, dang, man,
Yeah.
that is you got into the skin of a child who is experiencing so many emotions in that car with a dad that he doesn't see often but worships. And those
Yeah.
kinds of those threads are through this book with every character in there, and there are no minor characters. And people, authors could go to school on this book on that subject alone, on the there are no minor characters.
Oh man. Oh man, thank you. That's very kind of you to say. Um, I do like to look at every character as having its own arc. Whether it's Ronnie or his brother, or Ronnie's on again, off again girlfriend Jenny, or Bug's wife Kia, even the kids. Everybody has, in my mind, everybody has a real backstory, like everybody you meet in real life. And so those moments with Bug and his dad, or when Ronnie and his brother, like for instance, for people that haven't read the book, Ronnie Sessions is a guy who Bug is down on his luck. He's got this automobile repair shop that's kind of going under because he's got some new competition. And Ronnie Sessions is a good old boy who comes in town that he and Bug have worked together in the past, because Bug used to be a getaway driver. And Ronnie comes up with he has a score that he thinks will help him and Bug. And Ronnie's he's just as dumb and two-faced as can be, but he loves his brother. He loves Reggie. He's just as dumb as a box of hammers, but he loves his brother, and his brother loves him. And I wanted their bond to be real. It's an old cliche that nobody's a villain in their own story, but I think that's true. I think everybody thinks they're doing things for the right reasons. And I love that people have connected. I've had so many people email me that they found themselves liking Ronnie in spite of themselves, and you feel sorry for Reggie, or Kelvin kind of connected to you. So it warms my heart that people have been able to make that connection with all the characters, because all the characters are important to me. I mean, I put them through a lot of rough stuff, but I love them all, and they
Yeah,
all matter.
you
I
do.
think
You
that's
do
the
not
thing
treat
that's
you you don't treat them gently, but I have to say they are absolutely real, and you can tell that
yeah.
you have lived with these people in for I don't know how long. Is there a future for them? Is this a series or is this a one-off?
I think depending on how, well, let me put it this way. I'd like to go back to that world again. I have more stories I like um to discover and like to examine in that world. I think Bug and his sons and his daughter and his wife are interesting characters because they don't have simple answers to their problems. The answers to their problems are complex and hard and a little painful. And I'd love to see how they look 10 years down the road. I'd love to see how Bug deals with his sons when they're 22 and 18. And when he's a little older and a little, like we were talking before we started, he's a little older and a little slower. And, does he still have it? And how that would look. And so there's an idea percolating in my head of a story 10 years down from when Blacktop is set, and how the characters who have survived, how they move forward. So I think we'll be seeing them again one day. I'd like to go back and talk to them again. I like Bug. I think somebody asked me where he comes from, and he's me if I was way cooler than I am. So,
Well,
so I love to talk to him again.
he has a heartless streak that I can't imagine you have.
No, I don't have that. I don't have that. I'm too nice. I'm too nice to be a gangster. But I think the funny thing about Bug is like he's like somebody described him to me as Parker with a heart, and I didn't intend to write it like that, but I can see that because he loves his wife, he loves his children, he's very loyal to his friends, and he's very vicious to his enemies, and I think there's a certain amount of nobility in that. Of course, he has a lot of hubris, he makes a lot of tragic mistakes, but at the end of the day, he is honest to himself to a certain extent. And I think that's the thing that's interesting me about different characters is how honest are they to themselves, and how and that can be fascination in the delusion. Is a character deluding themselves? Is a character lying to themselves? I think that's one of the hallmarks and strengths of noir writing is characters who Jim Thompson, who's one of my favorite writers, was a master of that, of characters lying to themselves and lying to themselves about their motivations. And so I'm fascinated with that. I'm fascinated with what makes characters, what drives characters to do what they do. And so I'd love to revisit Bug and the folks of Red Hill again. I just finished another standalone that doesn't have anything to do with Blacktop Wasteland, but it's still a book about choices and about who we are and who we decide to be. I just turned it in actually. It's called Razor Blade Tears. I'll give you the elevator pitch real quick.
Yeah.
So basically, it's about these two fathers. It's about these two fathers, one black, one white, both ex-cons, whose gay sons would get married. And about a week after they get married, they're murdered. And the fathers decide to investigate the murders to avenge their sons, but also to redeem themselves because they didn't have really great relationships with their kids because of their kids' sexual orientation. And so it's really a book it's violent. It's about revenge, but it's also about redemption, and it's about growth and how do you move forward, and grief, and how do you handle grief, and how does that look. I told somebody it's I love old movies, so it's I said it's like Rolling Thunder meets the Defiant Ones. And if nobody knows what Rolling Thunder is, it's a
I remember that
movie,
one.
a great revenge. Yeah, I love that movie. Oh man,
that was the old
CBS Saturday Night movie, man.
Wasn't that the hand
Yes.
down the garbage disposal movie?
Yes, it's one of the darkest revenge novels. I tell you what, I watched that at like 9 years old with my granddad and my uncle sitting on a couch on the CBS Saturday Night Movie. I had no business watching that movie, none. But it's always stuck with me. I always admired the filmmaker's commitment to William Devane's revenge. It's very single-minded. It's very single purpose. He won't be. It's like almost like he's like the Terminator. He will not be denied. And so I kind of wrote this book. It's called Razor Blade Tears with that in mind. But I also wanted to examine, you know, relationships between fathers and sons, and I wanted to talk about what is a family and what constitutes family and forgiveness, and is forgiveness possible, and so I talk about that, but then also, you know, a lot of people get jacked up in this book. There's a lot of violence in the book, so my poor editor at Flatiron, she got the first couple of chapters and she sends me an email and she's like, so yeah, so they're pretty tough guys. I'm like, yeah, they are. To give you an idea, there's a scene early on. There's a scene early on where somebody gets killed with a tamper, which is a square plate gardening tool used to tamp dirt down, and somebody gets their head tamped in, and so it is violent, but yeah, I love using garden tools as improvised weapons. But
you know what? Blacktop Wasteland was not short on some creative violence either.
So, I tell you, it's funny, man. You know, sometimes you just. I was reading an article about crimes in the 18th century, and there was so many. They were talking about why there were so many axe murders in the 18th century. Is because that's what was handy. You got ticked off, and you grabbed the first thing that you could get your hand on. So when Bug busts somebody upside the head with a wrench, he's a mechanic. First thing, you know, anybody that's ever turned a wrench, that's that's not a feather. So
no, that is a deadly weapon, is what that is. Mm-hmm. So, Sean, is there a part of
but I mean,
oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just
gonna say. I mean, I don't want people to think that I'm just.
No, and you're not.
Go ahead.
In fact, the violence that you write is almost balletic. It really is interesting. It's peck and paw violence, and I think it's appropriate.
That's so funny that you said. That's so funny that you said that, because I love saying peck and paw. Oh my gosh, the Wild Bunch. Oh gosh, I could talk about Sam Peckinpah for hours, but the getaway. Oh man, and the funny thing is, I always try to make sure that the violence in my writing is earned. I don't do anything gratuitously, you know. I really work really hard, and I really try hard to make my violence have consequences, like it does in the real world. You know, I want if Bug gets hurt.
You are
like I said, if Bug gets hurt. Thank you. I think that makes the story stronger. You know, don't get me wrong. I love reading Pulp Fiction and just fast novels where the good guy gets punched in the face and he gets right back up and doesn't feel it the next day. And I mean, that's great. But I've been in a bar fight and I've been punched in the face and I felt it for a few days.
So I was going to ask you, you know, this, when people write books that are as fluid and as elegant as this one is, I think it leaves behind the impression that it's easy. And we both know that it's not, but I'm curious, is there a particular part of the novel writing process that is the hard part for you?
I'll tell you the hardest part of writing books for me, and it's going to sound really funny and goofy. I am terrible at spatial relations. I am. If you read my books and you built a house based on the way I describe houses, the house will be 27 feet long and 80 feet wide. I'm horrible at it. And so I've gotten away from it. I just don't describe the house anymore. It's like they live in a house. It's like, I'm horrible at spatial relations in houses, in buildings. Oh my God, buildings are the worst. And so I just kind of got away from it. I like, all right, I'm not, I don't think I'm gonna get better at it. So I think, but that's one part. But also for me, I think the most difficult part is sometimes being emotionally honest. And what I mean is sometimes I'm writing something and it's a difficult subject, and I will feel myself pulling back or pulling my punches because it's difficult for me. And I think that's not being honest to the story or to the characters. And so I work really hard at emotional honesty, at being as honest with my characters and allowing them to be as honest as they can be, warts and all. Because I think when you don't do that, you shortchange the reader and your characters. And so early on in my writing, I would do that a lot. And it really changed with Blacktop Wasteland. I wrote the ending to Blacktop Wasteland 4 times. The first 2 times, 2 of my friends who are writers, a writer named Kelly Garrett and a writer named Nikki Dolson, I had a very different ending. And both of them called me out on my BS. They're like, look, you can't end it like that. You can't. You got to, that particular character that's at the ending has to stand and take their medicine. And it really made me work really hard to do that, to accomplish that. And I think what ended up being published is the best ending the book could have had, because it's the most honest ending for the characters that are left alive. And I worked really hard at that. And it's difficult sometimes.
I found it to be a very, very real, very human, very believable every step of the way. That ending was fabulous. Let's not talk about it so that I don't screw it up and actually say something about it. But it's powerful and good on you. And I know what you mean, having said that you have to sort of get real emotionally, because that isn't always easy. And sometimes you got to kind of arm wrestle with your editors too about that. Have you had that experience?
Oh yeah. I'm very lucky that I've been lucky and blessed to have really a really good relationship with my editors. But I think if anybody was listening to this for any kind of tips, I think as a writer, you have to decide what hills you're going to stand on. What lines are you going to stand and hold? And it can't be everything. There are certain things that you have to let go. There are certain things. There's a scene. This is funny. There's a scene that was in my first book I tried to put in Blacktop Wasteland. I've tried to put in Razorblade Tears, and it won't work in any of these books. And I love the scene. It's funny and it's kind of interesting, but it just doesn't work. And as a writer, that's the hard part of knowing, okay, I love this scene, has some really good phrases and words and sentence structure, just doesn't work for this book. So you got to be willing to take that out. But at the same time, there are things that you have to put your foot down with editors. Like, no, this has to be in here. And if I could tell you what those are, I'd be making $1 million. I don't know. Every writer has to find that out for themselves. But there are certain scenes, certain characters, certain themes that are just, they're like the foundation of the book. And if you take those out, the whole book falls apart. And you have to stand for those. You have to stand for your writing. And if you're lucky, like I've been, you get an editor who understands that and is able to work with you and make sure that your vision is coming through. But there are also things that, there are things that, like, for instance, in Blacktop Wasteland, I had this whole, Michael Mann Heat shootout scene. I thought it was so much fun. But it didn't make sense in relation to the characters and the way that I'd already established them. And so even though I really loved it, it was exciting, and it was all shotguns and double barrel shotguns and people getting their heads blown off. It didn't work within the framework of how I've already established the characters. And so you got to be willing to take that out and take a look at it. And I think that's the thing that I think a lot of writers, especially writers that are on the come up, it's hard to do sometimes. You got to be your own harshest critic. You do. You have to be. And I can't speak for any other writer but myself. But 90% of the time, I'll write something and I start out loving it, then I hate it, then I kind of like it, then it's okay.
Every single time, that is my relationship with every book I've ever written. Oh my God, I think I'm writing the best book ever, or that I've ever written. And then halfway through, oh my God, this sucks. Where did I jump the tracks? Oh my God. And then when it's over, you're kind of like, maybe it doesn't suck that bad.
Exactly.
Are you given the intricacy of your the way that your characters interact with each other? Do you give a lot of pre-planning to that? Are you are you a story architect before you get going, or do you just let her rip?
I guess a lot of people come down in either they're a pantser or a plotter camp, but for me, I don't do either. The way I do it, my style that works for me is I write myself a really detailed synopsis, like 2 to 3 pages. And it's basically me telling myself the story. It's no dialogue. It's basically just a storyboard. This is what happened. Beauregard is a getaway driver who went straight. And he's trying to and I tell myself this story. And at the end of that synopsis, I just keep adding details to it until I realize, okay, I have something that has legs. And it doesn't always work. Like I had an idea for a story that just wasn't going to be a novel. It was either going to be a short story or a novella. I'm actually thinking of maybe turn it into a screenplay because it just didn't have novel legs. You know what I'm saying? But sometimes when I get to that point, it's like, wow, I tell myself this story. I'm like, oh, this is really cool. Now, I don't generally stick to the synopsis. The ending can change. Other details can change. But for me personally, I have to be able to see the beginning and the middle and the end. And then I can start writing the book. And then if the end changes or the middle changes, that's fine. But I just got to visualize it before I start. And so I don't do outlines. Now, I have a friend, Kelly Garrett is one. I mentioned her earlier. Eric Pruitt is another one. They are plotters. They got whiteboards and string connecting shit together and stuff. That ain't me. I can't do that. I'm not organized enough for that. But and there's nothing wrong with it. There's no wrong or right. It's just whatever works for you. Like for me, a lot of people tell me my synopsis style it wouldn't work for them, but whatever works for you. But yeah, I don't do a lot of just pantsing. I gotta kind of know. I gotta have a roadmap. I don't have to stay on the road, but I gotta have a roadmap as to where I'm going.
It sounds like I totally relate to that. I think we work in a very similar fashion. And I was talking to a group of writers one time, and they were asking that old plotter pantser question. And I was, my take on it is you kind of have to know where you're going, because the whole art of mystery thriller is kind of knowing where to hit the high notes and then where to lay back. And if you don't know where you're going, I don't know how you know when you're there.
Yeah, and for me, I'm obsessed with plot holes. I read my stuff over and over again because I hate plot holes as a reader. I'm the worst person to watch like a mystery or thriller movie with. I'm the worst friend to take to a movie because I either figure out who did it or I see an inconsistency. Like, well, those people didn't know those people. How did he know that? And so I'm obsessed with going through my stuff over and over. That's what I do a lot of my rewriting on, is plot inconsistencies? Does character A know this information so that he doesn't have to ask character B? Or how does character B know what character A is thinking, and so on and so forth? And so that's the thing that I really, and that's for me, that's where the synopsis helps. But whatever works. I think, and here's my my hot take for the evening. I think I could teach you grammar, and I can teach you syntax, and I can teach you the difference between active and passive voice, and I can teach you how to diagram a sentence, but I can't teach you how to be a writer. I think you either are a storyteller or you aren't. And I know that's controversial, but I just believe it. I think there are people who are. I just believe it.
I think that's beautifully said, and I think that's exactly right. But it's, we've all heard musicians that are technically proficient, but it doesn't mean you can play with heart, and you can tell the difference just by hearing it. You don't have to be a musician to tell the difference.
Oh my gosh, that's so great that you said it, because like I was just debating that with somebody a little while ago. I said, like, and I'm gonna delve into music a little bit. I love the blues. I'm a huge blues fan, right? And you take a guy like this guy named Junior Brown, right?
Oh yeah,
Junior Brown's a blues and rockabilly artist. Yeah, he created his own guitar and everything. Junior may not be the most technically proficient guitarist. He may not be able to play every single chord. He's not as technically proficient as, say, somebody like Stevie Vai. Stevie Vai is probably technically one of the greatest musicians you're ever going to hear. But for me, speaking for me, I connect more with Junior Brown's music than I do Stevie Vai. That's just me. You talk about like Greg Allman. There are way better organ players, I'm sure. There are way better singers, technically, that can carry an octave to a different range. But there are very few people. Like, if you listen to Greg Allman sing Whipping Post at 21 years old, that boy has been through some stuff that he don't even know he's been through. Right. And it just touches you. It's a passionate feeling. And, you can't explain it. And that's the beauty of art. That's the God-given ability that you can't quantify. And I think the same is with writers. You can read a book by somebody who has, is incredibly well-versed in sentence structure, who is incredibly, they don't end any sentence with a preposition, but that doesn't mean that you're going to connect with their writing the way you will with Elmo Leonard, or the way you will with Louis L'Amour, or the way you'll connect with Walter Mosley or anybody. And so I think there's a difference between technical proficiency and heart. And it's, I think, more apparent with musicians, but you can see it in writing as well, I think.
Oh, I did totally, obviously, totally agree with you, because it's just, it's a thing of beauty to get into a book where I trust anywhere this author wants to take me. It's okay with me because I'm in good hands, and we're going to end up somewhere cool. Yeah.
I'll say a funny thing about that. So when I was writing Blacktop Wasteland, there's a series. When I say series, there's a coincidence that happens in Blacktop Wasteland. And my editor was of the mindset, she was like, I don't know if people are going to buy it. And this is where you sound a little cocky. They'll buy it because they're already bought in. so they're going to, if they've gotten this far with me, they're going to go that far with me. And I think that's true. I try to emulate that because that's what I see in my favorite writers. Dennis Lehane, Walter Mosley. Craig Johnson is great with that. I mean, there are things in the Longmire series, if you wanted to pick it apart, like, oh man, all this stuff happens in Maricopa County, and why does Walt know this person? And it doesn't matter. I don't care. I just want to be told the story. I just want to be entertained. Right. And he does it beautifully.
You want to go on the ride, and you gotta trust the artist to take you there. And it's a wonderful, really trusting relationship. And as a writer, as an author, if you treat it that way, as kind of a sacred relationship where you have to treat your readers with respect, everything's going to go just fine. That's my take anyway.
Exactly.
It's going to go just fine if we all trust each other. And I did love the way
like you said,
Oh, please go ahead.
Oh no, I just was going to say to go back to talking about music to draw the parallel between music again. It's like if you're listening to Stevie Ray Vaughan and you're in a live performance, and he, God rest his soul, but if you were at a live performance of Stevie Ray Vaughan and you heard him play Texas Flood and he missed a note, who gives a shit? It's Stevie Ray Vaughan. It's like I'm there in the moment, and that's how I feel when I read Lee Child or when I read somebody really that I really admire, Jordan Harper, Michael Conley, any of those folks. If I read, writers that I'm friends with, Gary Phillips, Alex Segura is great at that. When you connect with somebody, I'll go anywhere you want me to go. So.
Yep. I'm exactly the same way. And by the way, I love the way you wove music references through the book. A lot of times people try to do that and it feels like it's just been jammed in somehow. And this was so organic and so cool. I really dug it. The whole deal, it's cinematic, it's visual. I can tell, what you were saying earlier about having to have it in your head as a movie. And I once explained it the same way to someone, and I was saying that, I kind of have to have it as a movie in my head, and then I just write it down. I just describe what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
But,
anyway. When it's really good.
It's a masterful
when it's
piece
really
of work.
good. I'll say this before we go. When it's really good, when it's really clicking on all cylinders, it's like you raise your hand to the heavens and it's a lightning bolt straight from the muse to the keyboard. That's when you know it's really, really cooking.
Couldn't agree more. Hey, your sense of time, your built-in clock is working perfectly because we are at last call now. And that means at Writer's Bar, we got 3 quick shots. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions and you got to answer off the top of your head. Okay. So first one, favorite curse word?
Well, shit.
Okay, I like it. Second question, the first record you bought with your own money?
Oh, the first record I bought with my own money, this is gonna date me. This is really gonna date me. Was Purple Rain by Prince.
Damn.
Yeah.
All right. Third shot, your favorite non-genre book or author?
Oh, my favorite non-genre book is 1,000 Acres by Jane Smiley. I love that book.
I've never read that. All right, I'm going to check that out. And for you, there's a fourth bonus question. Your favorite Zoom host?
Of course, it's Baron Bircher.
Well, there we go. I really appreciate that. Some people would think it's gratuitous, but it's not. Hey, Sean. So, hey, thanks for playing along. You're a really good sport. So, what is next? What are we going to see from you next?
The next thing is going to be my next novel, like we were talking about earlier, Razorblade Tears, which is going to be released in the summer of 2021. There are, I will say that the film rights for Blacktop Wasteland were acquired, and there's a screenwriter working on a script right now, so we'll see how that goes. The film rights for Razorblade Tears are being bandied about, so cross your fingers, we'll hear something about that, and hopefully I'll actually get some time to catch up on my reading over the Christmas holidays. So that's what I want to do next.
And where do people find you on the net? How can we follow you and keep up with what's going on with
you can connect with me. You can connect with me on my Facebook page at S.A. COSBY Author. Anybody that follows Twitter can find me at Black Lion King 73. I'm on Twitter. If you're on Twitter at 2:00 in the morning, I say a lot of crazy shit, so it's fun to follow me on there. And I don't have a website yet because I'm still old school, but those are two places to find me. And you can also just send me a message on Facebook. I love hearing from people. I love hearing from people that like the book and people that didn't like the book. Maybe I can do something better next time. So,
hey, Sean, thank you so very much for being here. You can find me at Baron R. Bircher Author on Facebook. And we're here on the Authors on the Air Network. And just very, very fortunate, very grateful to have the great Sean COSBY with us. And if you haven't read Blacktop Wasteland, what the hell is wrong with you? You've got to read this book.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed myself. This was a great time. Thank you again, Baron. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Cheers, my friend.
Thank you all for being here. All of this will be edited.
Oh, you're fine, man.
Are we off? Oh, here we go. There we are.